The first time I noticed something was wrong, my daughter wouldn't let me carry my own purse. We were standing in line at the cruise terminal in Galveston, the Texas sun already cooking the asphalt at 9 in the morning, and she reached over and slid the strap off my shoulder like I was made of glass. "Let me hold that, Mama. You've got enough to manage." I let her. I thought it was sweet. I thought after everything, after the 2 hard years she and her husband had been living under my roof, that maybe she was finally softening toward me again. I am 66 years old. I spent 31 of those years running a tax and bookkeeping practice out of a strip mall office in Tulsa, the kind of place where the same farmers and diner owners came to me every February with shoe boxes full of receipts and trusted me with the worst year of their lives. I bounced other people's books down to the penny. I know what it looks like when numbers don't add up. I should have known it looks the same when people don't. My husband had been gone 4 years by then. Heart attack, fast, in the garage on a Sunday afternoon while I was inside making pot roast. I never got to say anything to him. After that, the house got very quiet. And when my daughter called and said she and her husband were between things and needed somewhere to land, I told her to come home. I had 4 bedrooms and nobody in them. It seemed like a blessing dressed up as a favor. The cruise was her idea. A girl's trip, she called it, except her husband came too, which made it not exactly that, but I didn't argue. 7 nights, Western Caribbean, leaving out of Galveston with stops in Cozumel and Costa Maya. She showed me the brochure on her phone over breakfast one morning, all turquoise water and white towels folded into swans. "You never do anything for yourself, Mama. You worked your whole life. Let us treat you. Let us treat you." I held on to that phrase for weeks. I was so hungry to be treated. I paid for it, of course. I didn't realize that until later, when I went back through my statements with a yellow legal pad and a cold cup of coffee. The treat was charged to my card in 3 installments, dressed up as a surprise. But that came later. On the morning we boarded, I didn't know any of it. I just knew my daughter was holding my purse, and my son-in-law was wheeling all 3 of our suitcases, and the sea was that flat, shining gray that means a calm crossing. And for the first time in 4 years, I felt like somebody was taking care of me. The first 2 days were good. I want to be honest about that, because the good part is what made the rest of it cut so deep. We ate dinner at the same table every night. White tablecloth, a waiter named Reuben who learned I liked extra lemon in my water and brought it without asking. My daughter laughed at my jokes. Her husband ordered me a glass of wine and toasted to new beginnings, and I thought he meant for all of us. We watched the sun drop into the Gulf from the back deck, and I let myself believe my family had found its way back to itself. Looking back, the cracks were there the whole time. I just didn't want to read them. The whispering started on the second night. I'd come back from the ladies' room at the dining room, and the 2 of them went silent, the way people do when you've walked in on the middle of something. My daughter's hand was on her husband's forearm, her head tilted toward his, and when they saw me, they pulled apart and smiled too fast. "What are you 2 scheming about?" I said, joking, sitting down. "Nothing, Mama. Dessert. They have a key lime pie. But there was no menu on the table, and nobody had ordered dessert. I'd been a businesswoman too long to miss a thing like that. But I'd also been a grieving widow too long to want to. So I let it go. I told myself I was being a suspicious old woman who'd spent too many years auditing other people's lies and had forgotten how to trust her own child. Cozumel was our second port. We docked early, the ship nudging up against the pier while I was still finishing my coffee, and the plan was to take a taxi to a beach club my son-in-law had read about, one with palapas and a lunch buffet, and snorkeling off the dock. I remember being excited. I'd bought a new swimsuit, navy with a little skirt, because I'm too old to apologize for my legs. And I packed it in a tote bag along with my reading glasses, my sunscreen, my phone, and I cannot tell you why I did this. My passport, my wallet with my cards and $300 in cash, and the little folder of travel documents. My daughter had told me to bring all of it. They check ID at the beach club, Mama. And you don't want to leave your good stuff in the cabin where housekeeping can get to it. It made sense. Everything she said always made sense. That was the thing about her. She'd been a smart girl, top of her class. The kind of kid who could talk you into and out of anything before you'd finished your sentence. We took a taxi from the pier into a little plaza near the waterfront, all cobblestones and tin roofs and vendors selling silver and embroidered dresses. My son-in-law said the beach club shuttle picked up from the far corner. We stood in the shade of an awning while he checked his phone, and then he looked up with this odd brightness in his face, the kind you put on when you've rehearsed something. "Mom, we forgot the Dramamine," he said. "You get seasick on the tenders. There's a farmacia right around that corner. Would you mind grabbing some? My Spanish is terrible and yours is decent." He pressed a $20 bill into my hand. "American money. Get a big bottle. And maybe some waters." I started to say we could all go. He said no, too quickly, then softened it. "Stay together, and we'll lose our spot in the shuttle line. It's 2 minutes. We'll watch the bags." My daughter was already turned away, looking at a rack of postcards, her sunglasses down, and she didn't say a word. I should have looked at her face. That's what I think about at night. I should have made her look at me, but I went. I walked around the corner with a 20 in my fist and my tote bag still on my shoulder, because thank God I'd kept that on me. The farmacia was a block farther than he'd said. I bought the Dramamine and 2 bottles of water, and I practiced my Spanish with the woman behind the counter, who complimented my earrings, and it took maybe 12 minutes, 14 at the most. When I came back around the corner, the awning was empty. Not empty, like they'd moved into the sun. Empty, like they had never been there. No suitcases. They'd brought the suitcases ashore, I realized, all 3 of them, which made no sense for a day at the beach, except that it made perfect sense. It made the only sense there was. No daughter, no son-in-law, just a vendor folding embroidered dresses and a stray dog and the heat coming up off the cobblestones in waves. I want to tell you I stayed calm. I didn't. I stood there turning in a circle like a fool, the plastic bag from the farmacia swinging against my leg, saying their names out loud into a plaza full of strangers who didn't know me from Eve. I checked my phone. 1 bar. Then none. I called my daughter. It rang once and went to voicemail, that bright recorded voice telling me she couldn't come to the phone right now. I called again. Straight to voicemail. She turned it off. I looked at the time. The ship's all aboard was at 4:30. It was 11 in the morning. There was still time. I told myself there was still time, that this was a misunderstanding, that they'd gotten on the shuttle thinking I'd catch up, that I would find them at the beach club drinking margaritas and we would laugh about it. I flagged a taxi. I had a 20 no, I had $8 and change because I'd spent 12 on the Dramamine and the water like a thoughtful idiot. $8. I told the driver the name of the beach club, and he drove me 20 minutes down the coast, and it cost 6 of my $8, and the beach club had no reservation under my name or my daughter's name or my son-in-law's name. The girl at the desk checked twice, kindly, because I think she could see something starting to come apart in my face. I went back outside and sat down on a low stone wall in the full sun. I had $2, a phone with no signal, a bottle of Dramamine, a passport, and $300 in cash that nobody had taken because nobody had known I'd be carrying it. And it hit me then, sitting on that wall, the way the truth hits when you finally stop running from it. They hadn't lost me. They had left me. The suitcases, the whispering, the dessert that wasn't on any menu, my daughter holding my purse at the terminal so she'd know exactly where my things were. "Bring all your documents, Mama." The 20 pressed into my hand so I'd have a reason to walk away and a leash short enough to bring me right back. Except they hadn't planned on me bringing my own bag, my own everything, because they thought I'd leave it with them. They thought they'd be sailing away with my passport in their suitcase and me stranded on this island with nothing. I sat there and I did the math, because that's what I do. The ship would leave at 4:30. They would be on it. They would tell the crew staff something. Mama wandered off. Mama got confused. We couldn't find her. You have to understand, she's not been well since Daddy died. They'd cry the right amount, and by the time anyone figured out anything, they'd be back in Tulsa, in my house, with whatever it was they actually wanted. And I knew what they wanted. I'd known for about 3 weeks, without letting myself know it. A month before the cruise, my son-in-law had sat me down at my own kitchen table with his laptop and a stack of papers and a pen. Very gentle, very concerned. "Mom, we want to make sure you're protected. With Dad gone, if anything happened to you, if you got sick, there'd be nobody to make decisions, handle the bills, talk to the doctors. We just want to set up a financial power of attorney so we can help you if you ever can't help yourself." My daughter had made tea. The kitchen smelled like the bergamot she liked. He turned the laptop toward me, scrolled fast, through pages of legal language, and pointed to the line. Just sign there and initial these. It's standard. Our lawyer drew it up. I signed. I initialed. I trusted my daughter and the man she'd married because that's what a mother does, and because I was tired, and because the tea was warm and the kitchen smelled like home. I never read it. 31 years auditing other people's documents, and I never read my own. I didn't even get a copy. He said he'd file it and email me one. He never did. I forgot to ask. I sat on that stone wall in Cozumel and I understood that I had signed away the keys to everything. My accounts, my house, paid off and worth more than $400,000 in a market that had gone crazy. My retirement, what I'd squirreled away over 3 decades of February nights and shoebox receipts. And the cruise wasn't a treat. The cruise was the cover. Get me out of the country, get me stranded, and by the time I clawed my way home, they'd have drained the accounts and listed the house and disappeared. I gave myself 5 minutes. I have always been able to do that. Feel a thing all the way down, and then put it on a shelf where I can get to it later. I let myself shake. I let 2 twos come, and I wiped them with the back of my hand. Then I stood up off that wall, and I became the woman who used to walk into bank loan offices in 1989 and stare down men who assumed a woman couldn't read a balance sheet. First, get back on that ship or get home faster than they could. I walked back toward town because I couldn't afford another taxi. A long walk in the heat, the Dramamine bottle rattling in the bag. I found a little tourist office with a fan going and a young man behind the desk, and I told him my situation in plain words, no drama, the way you'd report a fire. My family had left the port without me. I had my passport and $300. I needed to know my options. His name was Matteo, and he could not have been more than 25. And he looked at me like I told him the sky had fallen, because to him, I suppose it had. He made calls. The ship, he confirmed, was scheduled to depart at 4:30, and would not hold for a missing passenger who had a passport in hand. They'd have flagged me as a no-show and offloaded my cabin's responsibility. Getting back aboard was a fantasy, but Cozumel had an airport. There were flights to the mainland, to Cancun, and from Cancun there were flights to the States, to Houston even, to Dallas. I asked him to price it. He typed for a long while. The cheapest way home, same day, scrambling, was going to eat almost every dollar I had, and then some. And then he said the thing that saved me. Senora, there is a flight tonight to Cancun to Dallas, and from Dallas you can connect to Tulsa in the morning. But you would need a card. 300 in cash is not enough for the international leg. A card. I had cards. I had my wallet. And my card still worked because the power of attorney let them spend my money. But it didn't lock me out of my own accounts. Not yet. Not until they got home and changed things. As long as I moved faster than they did, the money was still mine. I want to say something here about the people who helped me, because I've thought about them every day since. Matteo walked me to an ATM and stood guard while I took out the maximum, his arms crossed, glaring at anyone who came too close. The woman at the airline counter in Cozumel, when I explained, found me a seat that should not have been available and waved off the change fee with a flick of her hand and the words, "Mi mama tambien." My mama too. A taxi driver named Hector drove me to the airport, and when I counted out the fare, he pushed 2 of the bills back at me. "For your daughter," he said. And I didn't understand until he added, "When you see her, you tell her what kind of people Mexico has. Not the ones who left you. Us. I have his name written in the back of my checkbook. I am going to send that man something he'll remember." The flight from Cancun to Dallas left at 9 that night. I sat by the window with my passport pressed flat against my chest under my folded hands, and I watched the lights of the coast fall away, and I did not cry. I planned. 31 years of planning other people's escapes from the messes they'd made, and now I was planning my own. By the time the wheels came down in Dallas, a little after midnight, I had a list. Bank, first thing, before they were even off the ship, revoke the power of attorney, freeze nothing they could touch, change the online passwords, flag the accounts. Then the house, the locks, the lawyer, then proof. I needed proof of what that document actually said, the one I'd signed at my own kitchen table, and I needed it before they could file it or shred it. I spent 4 hours in the Dallas airport in a vinyl chair near a closed Starbucks, and at 6 in the morning I called my bank's fraud line. and I did not get off the phone until a human being understood exactly what was happening. The woman on the other end, her name was Priscilla, and I will never forget her either, stayed with me for 50 minutes. She froze the wire capabilities, locked out the secondary authorizations, and put a fraud alert on every account. "Ma'am," she said near the end, "I'm looking at an attempted transfer initiated 40 minutes ago. A request to move $210,000 from your money market. It's pending. It needs a callback verification to release. 40 minutes ago, from the ship's Wi-Fi, in the dark, somewhere out on the Gulf, they had reached into my life and tried to take it all while they thought I was sitting on a curb in Mexico with $8. Decline it," I said. "Decline all of it. And I want a record." The flight to Tulsa got me home by 9 in the morning, 2.5 days before the cruise was even due back in Galveston. They had no idea. As far as they knew, I was still a confused old woman wandering a foreign port. That was the only advantage I had, and it was the only one I needed. My neighbor across the street is a retired postal inspector named Walt, a careful, watchful man who notices things. The kind of neighbor you don't appreciate until you need a witness. He nearly dropped his coffee when he saw me coming up the walk with one tote bag and no luggage. "You're back early," he said. "Where's the kids?" "Still on the boat," I said. "Walt, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. The morning we left for the cruise, did you see anything?" He set his mug down on the porch rail. "Funny you ask. The night before y'all left, there was a truck here. Not a moving truck, a pickup. Loaded a bunch of boxes out of your garage after dark. I figured it was their stuff, getting ready to move out finally." He squinted at me. "Was it not supposed to be?" "It was not supposed to be. I went inside and walked through my own house like a stranger, and the picture came clear room by room. My husband's gun safe, open and empty. My grandmother's sterling, gone from the dining room hutch. The good jewelry, the pieces I only wore to funerals and weddings, cleaned out of my dresser. They hadn't just planned to take the house and the money. They'd been pawning my life out the back door for weeks. And on the kitchen table, sitting in a neat manila folder squared up like an exhibit, was a copy of what I'd signed. I made myself read it this time, all of it, every line, the way I'd read 1,000 returns. It was not a medical anything. It was a durable financial power of attorney, sweeping, granting my son-in-law authority over every account, every asset, the power to sell real property in my name. Dated 5 weeks before the cruise. My signature at the bottom, looped and familiar and damning. A notary stamp beside it. I called Walt back over and I borrowed his phone, the one with the good camera, and I photographed everything. Every empty drawer, every gap on every shelf, the open gun safe, the folder, the document, the signature, the notary seal, the date. Evidence. Document everything, assume nothing, trust no one. I told that to 100 clients. I'd finally take my own advice. Then I found a lawyer. Her name was Delphine Okonkwo, an elder law attorney downtown with a wall of framed cases she'd won, and a handshake that meant it. She cleared her afternoon when I told her what I had. She looked at the document the way I'd looked at it, fast and cold, and she said, "This is real. It's properly drawn and notarized. As of the date on this, your son-in-law has legal authority over your finances." Then she looked up. "Unless we can prove you were deceived about what it was." "Were you?" "I was told it was a medical directive in case I got sick," I said. "I never read it." He scrolled past everything and pointed at the line. "I never got a copy." He told the notary I had mobility issues and couldn't come to the office. I learned that today from my neighbor, who saw the notary come to the house. Her pen started moving and didn't stop. "The notary came to the house? For a financial POA? Yes, that's our thread," she said. "A notary who travels to a home, takes a fee, and notarizes a document the signer says was misrepresented. We pull on that." "What's the notary's name?" It was on the seal. A man named Curtis Vane, a freelance notary who worked out of his car, and when Delphine's investigator tracked him down 2 days later, he folded almost immediately. He remembered me. He remembered being told I was too frail to travel, then watching me. Because I'd been at the dentist that morning, I remembered now, the dentist and my son-in-law had timed the signing for the one window I'd be rushing through. Walk in fine, sign fast, walk out. He'd taken $300 cash for a job that cost 15. He'd known. He gave us a sworn statement and he cried while he did it. And I felt nothing for him, because a man who sells his stamp sells everyone who trusts it. The investigator found the rest. 3 real estate agents my son-in-law had emailed 2 months before the cruise asking what my house would bring. The replies all north of $400,000. The credit card debt $61,000 across 7 cards, all of it run up on restaurants and electronics and a leased SUV my daughter posted from like it was hers. And a search history, pulled lawfully through the discovery his own foolishness invited. How to get power of attorney over a parent. Can a senior be reported missing abroad? How long before a missing person is declared? He'd researched abandoning me the way I used to research deductions, line by line, and somewhere in there my daughter had read those searches over his shoulder and made the tea and not said one word. That's the part I couldn't put on the shelf. The money, I understood. Money makes people into animals. I'd seen it across a desk for 31 years. But she'd made the tea. She'd held my purse in the sun and called me mama and let me believe I was being taken care of all the way to a foreign curb. I rocked that girl through croup. I cashed in a retirement account to keep her out of student loans. I gave her 4 bedrooms and not one question. They came home on a Sunday, 2.5 days after I did, and they did not know I was there until my son-in-law's key wouldn't turn in my new deadbolt. I stood on the other side of that door and listened to him try it 3 times, then jiggle it, then curse. A word he'd never have said in front of me back when he was pretending. I heard my daughter say, "What's wrong with the lock?" And I heard him say, "I don't know. It won't." And then I opened the door. I will not forget their faces as long as I live. He went the color of ash. She made a sound, a little intake of breath, and her sunglasses slid down her nose, and for 1/2 of 1 second I saw her as a child again. Caught, the way she'd looked. The time I found the broken lamp behind the couch. Then the child was gone and something harder came into her eyes, something calculating, and that was worse than anything because it told me I hadn't been wrong about any of it. "Mama," she started. "Oh my God, we were so worried. We looked everywhere. We filed the report." "Stop," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I'd learned a long time ago that the quietest person in the room is the one in control. "I have a copy of the power of attorney you had me sign. I've read it this time. I have the notary sworn statement that your husband lied to him about my health. I have your emails to the real estate agents. I have your search history. I have photographs of every empty drawer in this house. And I have a record from my bank of the $210,000 transfer you tried to push through from the ship's Wi-Fi the morning you left me on that island. The plaza, the wall, the $8. It all came up in me at once, and I pushed it back down. My son-in-law's mouth opened and nothing came out. My daughter's hand found his sleeve, the same gesture from the dining room, the 2 of them folding toward each other against me. "This house is mine," I said. "The locks are mine. Your things are in the garage, in the boxes you didn't manage to steal yet. You have until tomorrow to take them. After that, anything left I'm donating, and I'll be filing a police report for the items already gone: the sterling, the jewelry, the guns. They have serial numbers. I wrote them down years ago, like a careful person does." I let that sit. "You both have until morning." He found his voice then, the way cornered men do, mean and loud. "That POA is legal. You signed it. You can't just—" "I have rights to take it up with my lawyer," I said, and I handed him Delphine's card and I closed the door. And the new deadbolt slid home with the sound I will remember on my deathbed as one of the most satisfying I have ever heard. I'd love to tell you it was simple after that. It wasn't. He hired a lawyer who tried to argue I was a confused widow with seller's remorse over a gift. There were motions. There was a hearing in a county courtroom on a gray morning where I sat at a table in my good blazer, the one I used to wear to bank meetings, and watched my son-in-law sweat to his shirt under questioning while my daughter stared at the table. The notary testified. The judge looked at the search history for a long, long time. And when she ruled, she did not soften it. The power of attorney was procured by fraudulent misrepresentation, void from the start, and the matter of the stolen property and the attempted transfer was referred to the district attorney. He took a plea in the end. 2 years probation, restitution he'll be paying off until he's old. A felony on a record that'll follow him through every job application for the rest of his life. My daughter wasn't charged. They couldn't prove she'd done more than know. And knowing isn't a crime, though it ought to be, when it's your own mother. She sent me a letter, months later, full of explanations that were really excuses, and I read it once and put it in a drawer. I haven't answered it. I don't know if I will. I changed my will. I sat in Delphine's office and I drew a clean line through everything they'd hoped to inherit, and I left the bulk of it to a foundation that helps older women keep their homes when family turns on them. Because it turns out, I am not the only one this has happened to. Not by a long way. And I sent Hector, the taxi driver, a money order. He'll have to drive into Cozumel to cash, with a note in my bad Spanish. And I called Priscilla at the bank's fraud line, the woman who stayed on the phone with me for 50 minutes in a Dallas airport, and asked to speak to her supervisor just to tell him what she'd saved. People ask me if it feels good. Winning. It doesn't. I want to be honest about that the way I've been honest about everything else. I kept my house. I kept my money. I kept my name. And I lost a daughter who was the last family I had, who held my purse in the sun and let me believe. Some nights I sit on my porch with iced tea and watch the families walk by, and I think about her at 6, climbing into my lap during a thunderstorm, certain that as long as her mother had her, nothing in the world could hurt her. I was certain of the same thing in reverse. We were both wrong. But I'll tell you what I learned. Sitting on a stone wall in Cozumel with $8 and a passport and a whole life somebody tried to take from me. A mother will give her children everything, and she should. But there is one thing she must never give away. Not to anyone, not to her own blood, and that's the part of herself that knows when to stand up, lock the door, and refuse to disappear. I almost gave that away in a warm kitchen that smelled like bergamot. I'm glad I took it back. It's the only thing I had left that was worth keeping, and it turned out to be enough. I keep coming back to the tea, that warm kitchen, the bergamot, my daughter's hands moving so easily while her husband scrolled past the words that would have saved me. None of what happened was an accident, and none of it was sudden. It was built piece by piece over weeks, while I let myself be comforted instead of being careful. Every kindness they showed me was a brick laid in the wall they meant to leave me behind. That's the hard truth I had to swallow on that stone wall in Cozumel with $8 in my hand. People show you who they are long before they do the thing. And I had chosen not to look. What carried me home wasn't luck. It was 3 things I'd let go soft in 4 years of grieving, and had to wake back up all at once. The first was simply refusing to lie to myself about what I was seeing. The whispering, the suitcases at the beach, the document I signed without reading. The warnings were all there, and the moment I stopped flinching away from them, I could finally think. Honesty about what's right in front of you isn't comfortable, but it's the only ground solid enough to stand on. The day I admitted my own daughter had planned to erase me, I stopped being a victim and started being a problem for the people who'd wronged me. The second was the part of me that had balanced other people's books for 31 years. The part that knew you don't fix a mess by panicking. You fix it by making a list and working it in order. Bank first, then the locks, then the lawyer, then the proof. I didn't outrun them with strength. I outran them by thinking 2 moves ahead, the way I'd taught 100 clients to do and had nearly forgotten to do for myself. A clear mind is a weapon nobody can take from you, not even with a notarized page. And the third was the plain stubbornness to stand up off that wall when every part of me wanted to stay sitting. I gave myself 5 minutes to fall apart, and then I refused to disappear, because that was exactly what they were counting on. Walt watching the street, Delphine clearing her afternoon, young Mateo making call after call. Good people met me halfway, but they could only help a woman who'd already decided to fight. I lost my daughter. I won't pretend the house and the money make up for that, because they don't, and the letter in my drawers still goes unanswered. But I kept myself. I learned that loving your children and protecting yourself are not the same act, and a mother who forgets the second one has nothing left to give with the first. Look honestly at the people in your life. Think before you sign anything that smells like love and feels like a rush, and never ever sit down on the wall when you still have the strength to stand. That's not bitterness talking. That's the only inheritance worth leaving.